Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Question: what makes a legally binding contract in the United States? My goal here is to make the law simple and easy for everyone to understand, freeing the law from the $3,000 or $300,000 law school monopoly. So my goal here is to give you the first year of law school for free. Now, if you're interested in that, and if you're interested in learning what students learn in the first year of law school, you can support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing to this content. Join the movement. So now let's talk about U.S. contract law. If you're in the United States and you go to an American Bar Association approved law school, there are 7 classes you must take within your first semester of law school. Those classes are torts, contracts, civil procedure, property, criminal law, constitutional law, and legal methods. Now, I, for instance, taught legal methods. Now, contracts is likely the only class that you're probably going to have for 2 semesters. Now, think about that. Why is that? Why is contracts the one class that you'll have probably for the full first year of law school? That's because it's involved in everything. Think about it. In criminal law, all plea bargains are contracts. In civil cases, something like 90% of all civil cases are settled. Those settlement agreements are contracts. So contracts is invasive throughout the law. Now, your contracts course in your first semester is likely going to be broken up into 2 distinct parts. First, contract formation. And then the second part usually is damages. Now, sometimes the professors teach damages first and the contract formation second. It all depends on what law school you go to. What is a contract? Well, a contract is an agreement between 2 parties creating mutual obligations. Now, they can be between you and some government entity, or you can be you and some friend of yours. 2 parties, and we're coming together and we're saying we agree to do something. Now, understand this. Just because you have a contract doesn't mean you can recover anything from that contract. We're interested in enforceable contracts. Think about this example. If you have someone who wants to employ a hitman to kill, let's say, their husband.
Between now and when it's done, you have to have an option to change your mind, even if you change your mind.
No, there's no, I'm determined already. I'm positive, 5,000% sure.
Well, you could have a contract to do that. But let's say the person does kill the husband and then the other person doesn't want to pay. Well, the hitman can't then go to the court and say, well, hey, I want this contract to be enforced. We had a contract. No, that contract is unenforceable. So here in the law, we really want to focus in on enforceable contracts. So what's an enforceable contract? Well, an enforceable contract is an agreement between the parties creating mutual obligations enforceable by law. So understand this. The law allows for both oral and written contracts to be enforceable. Some limitations on enforceable contracts. Simply put, enforceable contract means that you can take it to court and get the contract enforced. Now, as we talk about enforceable contracts, there are 3 theories of contract law. Now, some people call them principles, some people call them other things, but there are generally 3 theories of contract law. Now, these 3 theories are known as bargain theory, reliance theory, and restitution theory. Now, we'll get back to these 3 theories in a second because they are going to be vitally important to our understanding. So the first thing we have to understand is that a contract has 2 basic elements: mutual assent and consideration. Now, let's start with mutual assent. Mutual assent consists of 2 components: offer and acceptance. Now, sometimes you're going to hear law professors and even other people online tell you that the contract needs offer, acceptance, and consideration. But understand, offer and acceptance together is known as mutual assent. So formally, a contract needs 2 elements: mutual assent and consideration, and mutual assent encompasses an offer and acceptance. That leads us to now, what is an offer? So an offer is defined as the manifestation of intent to enter into a bargain made by the offerer to an offeree. Now, let me give you an example of what an offer is. And you know this. Let's say we have person A. And person A says, I offer you $100 for your car. That's an offer. That's the manifestation of intent to enter into a bargain with someone else. Here's my $100. I want your car. So now the important piece about an offer is that when an offer is made, you give the person who you're making that offer to the power of acceptance. Now, what is acceptance? An acceptance is the manifestation of an intent to enter into a bargain on the terms proposed by the offerer. So in our example, I'll give you $100 for your car. A proper acceptance could be, I accept, yes, any type of affirmation that I want to enter into this agreement. Now, there is a caveat here. The person who's accepting the offer can't change the terms of the offer. For instance, in our car example, I offer you $100 for your car, and then the person responds, well, what about $125? Could you do $125? Well, then that would be deemed a counteroffer. And a counteroffer does two things. It rejects the original offer, that $100 is no good, but then it puts another offer on the table, $120 or $125, whatever I said before, for the car. Now, the person who made the initial offer can say, yes, they accept this new offer, or they can reject it. But the two things that are most important is that the original offer is rejected. The person who made the counter offer can't go back and say, well, okay, I'll take the $100. That offer has been rejected. So now we've talked about an offer and acceptance, and that is simply mutual assent. So let's talk about consideration. Now, in the most simple terms, consideration is really the exchange of one thing of value for another. That could be your time. That could be something tangible like money for cars. That can be, I'll give you $100 to wash my car, or either, clean my house. You're exchanging something of value. Now, my contracts professor used to always love to tell us that it should be best thought of it this way, and maybe this may help you. Consideration is where both parties exchange something that they have a legal right not to do. So in our car example, the person who's offering to buy the car for $100 has a legal right not to offer that $100. And the person who's, selling the car has a legal right not to sell the car. And that was the question that she said in any situation you want to ask to see if there's consideration. Now, there are a lot more rules to consideration. There are actually, I think, 6 elements to consideration. Now, we're not going to go over those now. Understand now, for the purpose of this video, we are looking at consideration just as we did offer and acceptance in its most simplistic forms to understand contract law in the United States. In our later videos, we're going to talk about what does it mean to have an offer? What does it mean to really have an acceptance? What happens if the acceptance is not so clear? What happens if the offer is not so clear? Or even with consideration, what does it mean to truly have consideration? That will come. But here is just an overview of contract law in the United States. To have the basic elements of the contract, we need an offer, which we defined, acceptance, which we defined, and consideration. All 3 of these elements would give us a contract. Now, for our next piece of understanding U.S. contract law, we have to understand those 3 principles of contract law that I mentioned earlier. It's bargain theory, reliance theory, and restitution theory. All right, first, bargain theory. Now, this is the gold standard. Actually, I wouldn't even say the gold standard. This is the diamond standard. This is the holy grail. If you can recover under bargain theory, you are a happy person. See, if you're looking to enforce a contract under bargain theory, that means you have all the required elements. You have an offer, you have acceptance, you have consideration. What this allows the plaintiff to do in a case that they're trying to recover under bargain theory, this means they can cover the most amount of money eligible under this contract and the highest possible damages. If you're trying to have a contract enforced, you want that contract enforced under bargain theory. But let's say you're missing one of the major elements in contract formation. Let's say you're missing mutual assent. Let's pretend you're missing consideration. Is there any other way that the law allows you to recover if you are missing these pieces? Yes, our second principle of contract law is reliance theory. Now, this is your next best option. In this instance, you have mutual assent, but you don't have any consideration. Think about it this way. An example of a situation that would apply to reliance theory would be person 1 says, I promise to give you $100,000. And person 2 says, I accept. In this case, you have an offer and you have an acceptance. But do you have consideration? Well, the answer is no. Person 2 is not exchanging anything of value. See, this lack of consideration would fail under bargain theory. So is there any way for person 2 to recover in this situation? Yes. And here's what we call reliance theory, or some people may have heard of it as promissory estoppel. Now, In reliance theory, this would allow person 2 to recover under this contract if reasonably relied on the promise, and that reliance had to cause harm beyond not getting the thing that was promised. So P2 has to show that they relied on this promise reasonably, and that the harm that they got was just not from just not getting $100,000. Something else had to happen. For instance, let's say P2 quit their job. If they quit their job because they thought they were getting all this money, then they detrimentally relied. What happens if they moved out of their apartment in a bad neighborhood and moved into an apartment in a good neighborhood because they relied on this promise? Now, again, this heavily has to do with what's reasonable. If I know someone is unemployed who tells me they're going to give me $100, is it reasonable for me to rely on that promise? So here you're really talking about what's reasonable, and the court goes into that. But as you know, I like to keep things simple. So you're really talking about relying on a promise. Now, reliance theory does allow a plaintiff to recover if there is no consideration and they relied on a promise, i.e. reliance theory or promissory estoppel. So let's move to our last theory, or our last principle of contract law in the United States, which is restitution theory. Now here, a plaintiff may recover if there is consideration but no mutual assent. Now you may be saying, well, how could that happen? Here's a scenario. Let's say our plaintiff is walking down the street and finds a dog hit by a car. Our plaintiff takes the dog to a vet and pays $5,000 to bring the dog back to health. Lo and behold, after some time, the dog's true owner sees our plaintiff with the dog, and he says, I want my dog back. Does he get his $5,000 back? Now, in our scenario, we're going to assume the true owner says, hold on. You spent $5,000 to get my dog back to health? I didn't agree to that. I didn't consent to that. You did that on your own. You're a good Samaritan. But there was no mutual assent here. I didn't offer anything, nor did I accept anything. So think about this. Was this fair? Is it fair that our good Samaritan, our plaintiff, is out $5,000? No. See, the goal of restitution theory is to prevent unjust enrichment. For restitution theory, you really need to have an understanding of 3 points. One, you have to have a benefit that was conferred. The second thing is that benefit can't be a gift. If it is a gift, then there's no restitution theory. And the last piece, and I think the piece that troubles most students, is that whatever benefit that you conferred couldn't be unwanted. You would assume most reasonable people who love their dog would want their dog to be taken to a vet if it was hit by a car, right? That's something that would be reasonable to understand in those circumstances. But it would be unreasonable if someone was to walk by your house and paint your door, right? It's like, I didn't want that. No matter how bad the door looks, it would be a hard argument to make that you wanted somebody to paint your door without you asking and then be forced to pay them for doing this work. So that's what you're looking for unjust enrichment. Now, the reason why restitution theory is the last thing we talk about is because it's the least amount of money you can make. I like to call, like in the hood, how we say, you get out what you put in. Well, this is exactly what that means. You can generally just get back what you put into the deal. You paid $5,000 to get the dog fixed. You're going to get that $5,000 back. The person also may be able to get food they paid for the dog and, taking care of the dog. But that's about it. You're not going to get any type of real damages or anything, because the goal of restitution theory is just to put the plaintiff, the person who conferred the benefit, back in the position they were before they did that. Now, in practice, attorneys usually try to get their contracts enforced under bargain theory. And then they'll argue for reliance theory or restitution theory if they have those elements or if they can make their arguments. But if bargain theory is available, you don't argue reliance and restitution. You argue bargain theory, because that's where you're going to get all your money. I want to make it very clear. This was an overview of contract formation and theories of contract in U.S. law. In my next video, we're going to go over contract defenses and the statute of frauds. Now, don't forget, if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And I'm going to see you next time. My name is Nate. Peace.